I did want to end with thinking about what Pallas Athena can mean for you in a personal chart. And it's about the heroic, yeah? It's about being a hero or being a villain. It's about finding your own heroism. And where it is in your chart can be where you are heroic. And it's also about using your brain instead of your guts. It's about intelligence. And I think this is one of the reasons that that the Greeks, that she turns up in these stories so much, because it's about using your smarts. Yeah, and not just sort of going for it. And the reason I've chosen this very sort of, you might think they're a disparate group of people, right? But actually they all have Pallas Athena exactly on their midheaven. So they're representing Pallas Athena for us, for the general population. So first of all, there's Rosa Parks, we all know what she did. She is a hero. She did a heroic thing. She sat on the bus. She's in Scorpio on her midheaven, which is just, she dug her heels in. She's fixed. She wasn't going to do it. She wasn't going to move anymore. She sat on the bus.
But it also was a strategy.
Yeah, of course. It was part of a giant strategy. It wasn't just, random. No, it wasn't random. It was part of a big political strategy as well, which is very scorpionic, and a subtle one. So it wasn't, the strategy wasn't, let's all go march on, Washington now. It was, let's do this subtle, strategic thing and sit on the bus. And she's remembered forever for that. She will be remembered forever. And I think that's to do with being on the MC. Now, the second person is Anne Frank, who also is remembered forever. It's in Aries in her chart, conjunct Uranus. And I think one of the things that we remember her for is her intelligence. Because what shines out of her diary is the fact that she had a beautiful mind, yeah? And she was very young, Aries, She's a beautiful mind. And it's a beautiful mind in the midst of war. Which brings me to the other guy. I don't know if anybody recognizes who that is.
Doesn't have a nice mouth.
No, that is Goebbels.
I was going to say Goebbels.
Who also has and this is really important because it's about being a villain, okay? So we all like to think of our asteroids as doing wonderful things. In fact, he was the great strategic mind behind the Third Reich, okay? He was the guy who did the propaganda, and as I just asked my dear David just now, what was it that he said? And he said, if you're going to tell a lie, make it a really huge lie. Make it a really big one, and tell it often. Tell it over and over again, which is exactly what is happening to us at the moment, of course, with the fake news and all that stuff. But what did he have? He had an incredible strategy. It was a war. He saw it was the war, right from the start. He was at war, Goebbels, and he had a strategy and he saw it through, and when it didn't work, he killed himself and his children and his wife. They were the ones who took the poison in the bunker. But he had a great strategic mind because it worked. Also, the other person that I think is very interesting is Christine Lagarde, who is Pallas Athena. She is you just see it. She's got the silver helmet on. She's got the erect carriage. She's got that warrior feel. She's got it in Capricorn. But I also think that she is a bit of a Cassandra. She says this stuff. It's all going to be really bad. You guys have got to do something. And no one listens. Even though she's the head of the IMF. People haven't been listening to what she says about Brexit, for instance, or that these trade things that she's not listened to. And I think that may be another thing with having the vision, is if you haven't got the planetary support in explaining your vision very, very clearly, it's not necessarily that helpful to have the vision. It can actually be kind of difficult to have the vision, both inward and outward. So that is what I have to say. Does anybody have any questions? Or have I stunned you to silence?
Did you look at retrograde at all? If
No.
That makes a difference. Okay.
No, I didn't. I just
Yeah, no,
wanted to
that's
give
fine.
you an idea of the concepts
Yeah.
of Pallas, and what you should be thinking about, because you can look at a chart. You know, you look at these asteroids and you think, what the hell is going on? This is just much too much information. The other thing I would say when you're looking at charts is that she does seem to work. She needs to be an aspect, yeah, a tight aspect. I would keep the aspect really. I would keep the orb really close, and I think she works better, you know, more obviously in conjunction with other, you know, she's using other planets. And the way that Faye was talking about Ceres using other planets, I think that she does that too. Yeah, and I would also look at the reason I brought up some of these national charts and also the Good Friday Agreement was because of the idea that these are transits as well. Yeah. So when she's in transit, it's a time that you can speak the truth and possibly be heard or possibly not be heard, but at least know the truth. And I wouldn't say negotiate exactly, but bang heads together and bring peace. So you're not the negotiator like Ceres. You're the person who's the chairman of the board, standing at the thing. So you're like the general. You're saying, you guys do this, you guys do that, come together, you can make peace or you can make war. You're not on a one-on-one. You're much more, or you're an observer. So I think it's also really useful to think of those female war correspondents. You know, what are they doing? They're really not involved. They're not even the same gender as most of the combatants.
There is a question I'd like to ask you. It's about Pallas and feeling.
Feelings. Nothing more. Not much. I don't think that she's very touchy-feely. What do you think? I mean, I think that she's quite cool.
Strategy and cool.
I do not think it's a warm thing, okay? I'm sorry to say, I would love to say she's cuddly, but she's just not. And it's quite a cold, that's why she so functions, pardon Aquarians, that's why she functions so well in Aquarius. Yeah. The other thing, we were talking about this yesterday, and this is just FYI, just because I think it's interesting, is the Roman astrologer Manilius has these tutelary deities that he assigns to all the signs, right? Which doesn't mean that they're the rulers. It means that they can either help the sign or that they have an affinity for the sign or there's some connection. And Pallas Athena he assigns to Aries, which I think is interesting. This is because she's associated with war, but what she does, she cools down that Aries. She cools down the Mars. She's like, calm down. And I think that's another function of Pallas Athena, is to bring that cool, cold intelligence. And that's why I like the word intelligence for her actually more than wisdom, because, I like wisdom as well, because then we get both kinds we get the inner vision as well with the vision, with her vision. But wisdom connotes a kind of inner knowing, and that's not always what Pallas Athena is about. It's about actually seeing.
Christina, just going back to Molan and her helmet and her wig.
Yeah.
She apparently took it off at strategic moments in order to further the peace process.
I love that. Don't you think that you can just see that? Right, I'm taking my wig off.
Yeah. And so people would feel compassion for what she was going through. And then they'd be forced to negotiate. So she used her helmet strategically.
Yeah.
I think she also threw it at people. Took it off and fling it at them. It must have been terrifying.
I would like to have seen that. Jerry Adams. Ugh.
There's a film about
Yes.
it. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, where she does it to make people feel uncomfortable, though, not compassion. So,
Yeah, I think she did it to make people feel uncomfortable. Look at me, I'm a bald lady.
yeah.
She
So-
was
and that-
wrong-footing them, wasn't she?
But don't you think that's interesting, like a helmet? I mean, the hair is like a helmet, but also that baldness is like unwomaned, you know? And one of the things about Pallas Athena and her, the fact that she's dressed in a armor, is what does that do? It unwomans you. Yeah, that's what Lady Macbeth should have done. She should have put armor on instead of, you know, it unsexes you. Yeah, and so it's interesting and important also to remember that she appears as a boy in the Odyssey, or a man, a traveler.
She's always in armour.
No, she's not always. She has the helmet and the shield, and she often has a lance, and she has the golden sandals. But otherwise, no, she doesn't. She's a goddess. She doesn't really need the armor. But when she's possessing, you know, as Joan of Arc, she's in armor. And you know, Joan of Arc, to me, it's clearly it's Pallas Athena.
Joan of Arc crops up a lot with schizophrenics, and it would be really interesting to know what it is they're not doing, that she forces herself out in this form of mental instability.
What do you mean she's?
Well, when my crazy mother-in-law went crazy, she was diagnosed as schizophrenic. I think it was the label. They had to put something on her. But in the institution that she was in, there were about 7 or 8 Joan of Arcs in there.
That's really interesting. I was obsessed with Joan of Arc when I was a child. I'll just tell you now.
Well, now you're the Oxford astrologer. It's a version of her.
Yeah, exactly. On my helmet. Exactly.
But it'd be really interesting I mean, I found this fascinating, this talk, but it'd be so interesting to know why these people had to, you know,
Can I make a
forced
suggestion?
into this.
Which is, when I first, at the beginning of this talk, I was talking about Dionysus versus Athena. And Dionysus, born from Zeus's leg, is about losing your mind. Okay? Yeah? She is the opposite. So what they're not, and that's why they're trying to find the Joan of Arc. They're trying to get to the Joan of Arc because they know they've lost their mind, and she's all about the mind. So there. That's what I would suggest. I would be really interesting to look at their charts.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
obviously.
obviously.
Yes.
But that would be my sort of
Having
mythic
yes,
explanation.
yeah, there's something there,
Yeah, and it's important. I mean, it's useful to think about her as an opposite to Dionysus. Yeah, and interestingly, you know, we could say, we have the wrong chart up, but we could say, you know, that Neptune is chaotic, right? It's chaos, and that Neptune going over the Good Friday agreements, Pallas and Jupiter, is this approaching chaos. If they're, you know, maybe they'll be able to deal with it, but maybe not.
Wouldn't it be nice if it were approaching idealism instead?
Yeah, exactly. Approaching compassion. Broad compassion.
My Steve Bannon dream chart.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.